Thank you very much for being here. I will today present you our research with Professor Anja Neindorf on the use of Facebook advertisement, focusing especially on tools and content options. Now, the promise of Facebook for online survey researchers is clear. Facebook boasts around 2 billion daily users across the entire world. And if you look at those countries, these are rich countries and poor countries, democratic countries and anti-democratic countries. In that sense, Facebook offers quick, affordable, unmediated access to a very diverse sample across the entire world. And unsurprisingly, many researchers are taking advantage, increasingly more researchers are taking advantage of Facebook advertisement tools for the use of, for the purposes of recruiting survey participants. We believe that, on the other hand, still there is need for more methodological research, which will uncover how researchers can best benefit this source. Now, there are especially 2 points that needs a special consideration when we are using Facebook. The first one is, of course, the cost. Facebook advertisement is advertised with respect to cost, just telling how cost effective these samples can be, but there's no guarantee for that. It completely depends on the choices that business owners and researchers make. And secondly, the sample bias is a crucial issue when we are using Facebook advertisement. This is because Facebook advertisement is developed for business owners. And in that sense, Facebook tries to find people who will like that advertisement and then optimize towards those people, which will produce, of course, very homogeneous samples unless advertisers intervene directly. We, on the other hand, we want heterogeneous samples as researchers. So how to solve the tension between cost and sample bias? These are the questions we are asking in this research. Our research is formed of 2 studies that we have conducted during this year. In the first study, we explored Facebook tools offered by Facebook. In the second study, we explored how we can modify advertisement content, text, image, or incentive so that we can make our advertisements more successful, more representative, and more cost efficient. Let's start with the first study, Facebook tools. Facebook offers a very wide range of over 10 different tools researchers can use to change how Facebook will use its algorithm to deliver advertisements. That is optimization tools used by Facebook, budget, how much Facebook will spend on a daily basis, what will be the audience, and so on. In this research, in the first study, we are focusing on campaign objectives, optimization tools, and the audience, defining the audience of advertisements. Let's start with campaign objectives. Campaign objectives determines how Facebook will use its optimization algorithm. And remember, optimization algorithm is key to Facebook's strength and weakness for research. It is key to Facebook's strength because optimization algorithm, that is Facebook's way of discovering who will like that advertisement and trying to optimize towards that particular group, is why Facebook advertisements are cheap, but also its weakness, because this is why Facebook is coming up very homogeneous samples. Facebook is offering 3 main categories of optimization algorithms. One is reach, the other one is traffic, and finally the third one is conversion. Reach, just trying to maximize the number of Facebook users who will see the advertisement. Traffic, maximizing number of Facebook users who will click on your advertisement. And finally, conversion, tries to maximize the number of Facebook users who will take an action outside of Facebook advertisement. In our case, of course, this is completing a survey. Conversion will try to maximize number of people who will complete your survey. Otherwise, for business owners, this will probably be buying a particular product. Now, as you see, these options are at tension with each other. On the one hand, we want to maximize the number of Facebook users who will see the advertisement, because this means more diverse groups. On the other hand, we want actually people to complete our surveys, otherwise it's meaningless. So how to solve which one of these is best? Secondly, Facebook lets us targeting based on demographic properties, attitudes, and behaviors of Facebook users. Now, the issue of targeting is directly related to Facebook optimization algorithm, because the more specific our targets are, the more narrow the more narrow the audience will be, and the more limited Facebook's optimization algorithm will find a space to work and to learn, basically. In the sense, we have developed three different groups of targeting, three different ways of targeting. Non-targeting, not using any demographic target at all. And in the sense, Facebook's optimization algorithm will work freely to optimize, to find people who will complete our surveys. Single targeting, targeting based on one demographic property at once. Certain advertisements directed only towards female, while certain advertisements directed only towards male. In that sense, by dividing, basically stratifying our advertisements, we are trying to create more heterogeneous samples. We are trying to recruit both female and male. And finally, cross-targeting, targeting based on several demographic properties. One advertisement for male, college graduate, young people, while another for female, non-college, and so on. Of course, the more detailed our group's targets are, the narrow will be the base, the audience for that particular advertisements, and the more limited it will be for Facebook optimization algorithm. In our study, by the way, when we use demographic targeting, we are targeting based on age, gender, and education. That's always the case. Now, then we have conducted our study one, first in UK and then in Turkey and Spain. And 3-to-2 design in both countries. In UK, we used conversion, traffic, and reach, and we crossed over them with no targeting at all and cross-targeting. In reach, as I will explain in a bit, didn't work at all, and we dropped it in Turkey and Spain, and instead we added single targeting as another factor that we explored. So in the sense, we explored how these combinations of optimization algorithms and targeting worked to produce samples. Now, a short summary. First of all, our research has shown that Facebook can provide affordable samples. When you look at that, in the case of United Kingdom, for example, in the cheapest strategy produced a sample in which cost per participant was as low as 0.25 pounds. Now, when you compare this to rates provided by commercial survey companies, the gap is huge. A second finding was that conversion, that is algorithm optimizing towards survey completers, towards people who will complete your survey, was the one that worked best. Now, if you look at numbers here, Facebook delivers what it promises. Reach campaign reaches to most people. Most people see your advertisements if you choose reach. Most people will click on your advertisements if you choose traffic. But then these people are people who just click on advertisement, go to your Qualtrics survey page, but then don't complete the survey. And it is actually conversion who brings you survey completers. So one finding in our study was that actually Facebook optimization tools can be used to find people who will complete your surveys, and that is the most cost-effective way. Just compare costs across all three countries. Conversion, despite fewer number of people seeing your ads, clicking on your ads, that campaign, conversion campaign, brought most people to our survey. Provided most survey completions. A second finding is that demographic targeting works best. Now, if you compare numbers, there's a trade-off here. If you don't use any targeting at all, then you will have more survey participants, more successful survey participants, just because Facebook optimization will have a wider range to learn and optimize. On the other hand, these samples are very imbalanced. In the case of UK, for example, only 5% is young. Now, on the other hand, the more targeting you do, your samples tend to be smaller a bit, but significantly more balanced compared to non-targeting or single targeting. So for example, compare here, in Turkey, in which young people form only 13% of your sample, as opposed to 31% when you use cross-targeting, much closer to population benchmark. Same one again in Spain, with more targeting, you get smaller samples, but you get samples that are much more closer to population benchmark in terms of demographic properties. So the conclusion here is that conversion and demographic targeting, specific demographic targeting, cross-targeting works best. Now, this brings us to the second study. Okay, these are tools that helps researchers most. But what about the content of advertisement? In study one, we use the same advertisement across the entire study for all different campaigns. What if we change the content? Now, here you see a classic advertisement, a Facebook advertisement. As you can see, we can choose an image that we want, and we can modify the text here. So basically, researchers have options to change these text and image. In addition to that, you can use no incentives, or you can add some incentives to your study so that basically your advertisement might be more appealing to people, although you might increase the cost a little bit. So we conducted a second survey in Turkey in May 2021. The goal in this survey was recruiting voters of the ruling party which is usually harder to recruit. The ruling party, AKP, conservative right-wing party, and across our studies, we have found that it is harder to recruit conservative voters. Our campaign objective, based on what we have learned from study one, was conversion, and we have used demographic targets for age, education, and gender. We have released 12 different advertisements at the same time, and data collection lasted until we recruited 250 ruling party regime voters by each of these advertisements. Now, here you see a full list of samples. Now, we have used our design is we have used 4 different incentive structures. Let me go that way. No incentive, some advertisements, as you see the one previously. For some, we have used direct payments. We offered people 0.5 pounds direct payments. For low lottery, we have organized lottery for 5. We have invited people to participate in a draw for 5 pounds. And in high lottery, we promised people to participate, to make them participate in a lottery for an iPad. Expected outcome across all those conditions was the same. In addition to that, we also varied images and advertisement text. In the case of images, some of our images was just base condition microphones, as you have seen, as we have used in study one. In others, if there's an incentive, we have used the image of incentive. If not, in some other advertisements, we used human photos to see whether male or female photos would appeal to people. And in some advertisements, our advertisement text mentioned the political content. In others, it did not. And in egotistic one, we just try to appeal to people's egos, saying that they are specially selected for these surveys. Now, we see a huge variation across our results. First of all, let's look at the speed, recruitment speed, the speed until we recruited 250 regime voters. We recruited 250 regime voters in 2 days when we used incentive conditions, when we offered people direct payments or low lotteries, participating in lotteries for 5 pounds. On the other hand, all other conditions, it took significantly longer to recruit 250 people. The only exception is political condition, in which the political image, when we use an image of Erdogan with Turkish flag, recruitment process was much more speedier. We again reached 250 people in 2 days. Now, and this of course is reflected in costs. As you see, the cheapest option is using political image. The average average participant in our survey costed 0.26. And again, this is regime voters, which is harder to recruit with Facebook advertisement tools. Now, when the second comes, very interestingly, advertisement with incentives. When we use incentive images, when we promise people to advertise, to participate in our surveys, it only costed £0.44, including the incentive cost and Facebook's cost. And this is significantly less than, for example, conditions advertisement in which we used human photos, which shows that it is better for researchers to use actually incentives rather than avoiding the use of incentives. The only exception is political images, but there is one thing to see about political images. What we see here is that when you use political images, here we are comparing results to population benchmarks of AKP voters in Turkey. You create samples that are much more imbalanced, much less representative. These are, in our case, more college graduates, more male, and significantly more interested in politics. That's when you use political images. And on the other hand, with incentives, when you use incentives, as you see here, it is significantly more similar to population benchmarks. Why does this matter? In order to see why it matters, we just explored how treatment effects change across different advertisements. In this case, we use a treatment, a crisis treatment, in which we mentioned about economic problems in Turkey and asked people their economic outlooks. Now, overall, in our sample, treatment worked as expected, minus 0.2 average treatment effect, as you see across the sample. And this is the same for all material incentive conditions, more or less. On the other hand, in samples formed with political incentive, political advertisements, there is no treatment effect. Because this is a very political sample, people have strong political opinions and they don't react to our treatments. So what this research shows is that when you should be, it might be tempting to use political images because recruiting participants will be a very speedy, cheap process, but then your sample might be less worthy in terms of representativeness. To sum up, researchers can use Facebook to recruit low-cost samples across the world. Conversion is good, and it helps distinguishing link clickers from survey completers. Demographic targeting is needed if you want to create more balanced sampling. Advertisement content matters a lot, and we suggest, or we have found that using incentives is a very good method, especially lotteries or direct payments. You will end up with cheaper samples, and recruited in a speedier way. And using political images might be tempting to draw attention, but the sample will be very imbalanced and impervious to experimental manipulation. Thank you very much for watching our video.